to be together in this moment. My tradition on Erev Rosh HaShannah is to tell a story and to see what lessons might emerge. Tonight's story is a travel story from a professional traveler. Some of you may remember the Birnbaum travel guides. Stephen Birnbaum founded the series and wrote precisely 36 double high travel guides before he succumbed to leukemia at the age of 54. And in one of his travel essays, he relates how he once went for a business trip to Germany on a night like this. Yeah, it was actually the very first night of Rosh Hashanah. He thought of himself as an assimilated Jew and therefore had no compunctions or feelings at all about this trip or its timing. His guide engaged him in conversation. Birnbaum, that's a German name, isn't it? It means pear tree. Tell me, does your family come from Germany? Birnbaum didn't think it was all that worthwhile to explain that while, yes, his father's roots were from Germany, his family had migrated to Poland in the 13th century. And to himself at the moment, he's thinking, yeah, they moved, but 7 centuries later, it didn't save his father's parents and 5 sisters from Hitler. So he just simply replied, yeah, they came from Germany. But the driver continued. It must have been difficult for them during the Second World War. Birnbaum nodded at a loss for an answer. But suddenly, his grandparents, aunts and uncles, and cousins became real to him for the very first time. He had been about 6 years old when his father had learned of their deaths. He had actually never seen them and, in fact, had never given them any real thought. And now, for the first time, he was trying to imagine what they had been like. He describes his reaction. It had taken 2 steps onto German soil and just a few words from the first German I had met to evoke this reaction. Talk about consciousness raising. On the 5th day of his visit in Germany, he was invited to a dinner in a small village not far from the North Sea. And after dinner, his host took him for a tour of the house. In a long hall that was lined with large oil paintings, his host pointed out his ancestors, who were all dukes, counts, and barons. And then pointing with obvious pride to the last painting, he declared, and that is my father. The father had steel blue eyes and a fiercely determined jaw. The artist had missed nothing, down to the shining SS initials on the father's collar. Birnbaum realized that his host's father had been a member of the Schutzstaffel, the notorious paramilitary wing of the Third Reich that was most responsible for murdering Jews during the Shoah. And suddenly, Birnbaum, the assimilated Jew, felt that he would suffocate unless he left the house immediately. He made a hasty apology, ran out of the house, and found himself shaking. Astonished at his own reaction, Birnbaum reveals 5 days in Germany had uncovered an identity I had labored a lifetime to minimize. But I was a Jew, and there was no getting away from it. Birnbaum had thought of himself as a totally assimilated Jew until confronted with the reality of anti-Semitism. And suddenly he thought of what the Nazis had done to his own family, and then at the same time realized what they had done to his extended family, the Jewish people. In that click moment, that moment of revelation, he discovered that deep in the recesses of his being, there lay das Pintel Yid, a tiny spark of Jewishness that had been kindled for the very first time. Several days later, Birnbaum's business travels took him to Regensburg in southeastern Germany. A thought now had been germinating, and so he asked his guide if he would find out if there was still a synagogue in Regensburg, because he wanted to attend services for Yom Kippur. The guide brought him to services at 9:30 a.m. Birnbaum had not been inside a synagogue for 18 years. Having arrived early, the caretaker let him in, but he was alone for some 15 minutes when two older men entered and nodded to him. After a while, one of the men came over and without a comment pushed up his sleeve. And there on his forearm was a concentration camp tattoo of indelible blue numbers. And his companion rolled up his sleeve, revealing the same. Later on, an even older man came in. They exchanged Holy Day greetings, and then he rolled up his sleeve to reveal his numbers. It was like a bond between them, a symbol of shared tragedy. Slowly, one man after another arrived, and they quietly sat and conversed. And Birnbaum wondered why they didn't start the service. And suddenly it dawned on him that they were waiting for a minyan, for a 10th Jew to enable them to begin the service. And finally, everybody heaved a collective sigh of relief. The 10th man had arrived, and he introduced himself to Birnbaum as Ben Mandel from Plainfield, New Jersey. He told Birnbaum about his new home and his business there. So Birnbaum asked him what he was doing in Regensburg on Yom Kippur. He explained, "I was liberated here." And then he rolled up his shirt sleeve to reveal his own set of numbers. He explained that his brother, sister, and he had been sent to Auschwitz. His sister died there, but he and his brother were liberated by the Allies. His brother had emigrated to Israel while he went to the United States. So every year, Ben Mandel visits his brother in Tel Aviv for Rosh HaShannah and then goes to Regensburg for Yom Kippur. He explained, "It helps me to remember how lucky I've been. It makes me remember how it was. Besides, there aren't many Jews left here, just these few old men. Over 10,000 Jews once lived in this area, and now they can hardly make a minyan on Yom Kippur. Imagine." I myself cannot imagine someone who had gone through the Shoah describing themselves as lucky or returning to the center of horror yearly. Birnbaum does not tell us what he thought. He merely states that he then closed his eyes, sat back. Why did he cry? Perhaps it was because of the pathos of these survivors, each with his own story of horror. Perhaps it was in admiration for Ben Mandel, a survivor who could understandably stay at home, but who yet returns in thanksgiving to God and in loyalty to fellow Jews to help them make a minyan for Yom Kippur. Perhaps he cried in anger at himself, at the many years he had attempted to downplay, even deny his own Jewishness. And perhaps he wept with esteem for the saving remnant of the Jewish community of Regensburg, who refused to give up still and struggled to maintain their identity and their minyan, a moribund community. Indeed, the minyan was interlinked with their identity. Birnbaum concluded his account with these words: Germany is not the place for an assimilated Jew to visit if he expects to stay assimilated. Now, I tell you this story this evening for several reasons. While we do not want to make or suggest any comparison to Birnbaum's family in Europe or the lives of the Regensburg millionaires, we should all be very clear that we have been through a lot ourselves these past several years of the pandemic. And knowingly or unknowingly, we carry the effects of it all with us and within us, wherever we go, wherever we are. Our changed way of living, our changed way of socializing, our changed way of communicating has all shifted the way we do life. And we too, like Ben Mandel, feel lucky in some ways. And like Ben Mandel, feel that life still holds out much for us in this new year. We, like the Regensburg millionaires, recognize the spirituality of minyan, the power of community, and sense that we do belong to one another. Community matters even more than ever in an age of physical distancing and Zoom. Our CAH family this past June approved a new mission statement that was emailed to all members and lives on our website under the About Us tab. We have also placed a copy of it in your additional booklet on page 12. We hope that you will not just read it, but actually sit with it over this high holy day season. And the third point of the mission statement states, we strive to create a community in which Judaism feels central, indispensable, and relevant. What the Regensburg Minyan was to those survivors, we hope CAH can be for you. Finally, Stephen Birnbaum's reconnection to Judaism renders him, in more classically Jewish terms, a Baal Teshuvah, a Jew who has returned to an appreciation of our heritage. Whether as assimilated as Birnbaum was, or as connected as our clergy team is, we are all here tonight because we too need to have our own Pintele Yid rekindled. Like Birnbaum, we do not always know when we'll be touched by a chance encounter, a conversation, an insight from someone during a class discussion, or even a haunting melody. It can happen by spending a Shabbat meal with someone here and falling in love all over again with the warmth of Shabbat meals with others and the exaltation exuded by Ruach HaShabbos, the Shabbat spirit. It can happen when we study Torah together, which means argue Torah together, or when we feed the Ventura area food insecure population. All of those can be Kodesh, powerful moments. Rabbi HaYam Halberstam, the 19th century Hasidic leader in Sants, told a story of a man wandering for days in a forest, lost. Suddenly someone approached. Hopeful, he hurried over to the woman and asked, "Sister, I've been lost for days in this forest. Which is the way out?" She replied, "Brother, I do not know the way out either. I too have been wandering here for many days. But this I can tell you. Do not take the way I have been taking. It will lead you astray. So now, let us join together and look for a way out together." We all sometimes feel like we are lost or wandering aimlessly, or have gotten off our own path, or just can't seem to find our own way. So let's this year, even more than before, using the phrases of our new mission statement, come together to anchor our lives, to find guidance, to welcome and care for each other, to find spiritual direction and personal deepening, to feel connected to something greater, to be part of a community upon which we can rely. In discovering each other, we can find ourselves. And in discovering ourselves, we'll already ensure that 5783 will be a good, sweet year. Ken Yehi